everyone, this is Payanna and welcome to my video, and today I'm going to be talking about Victory of Eagles, which is the 5th book in the Temeraire series by Naomi Novik. So let's have a recap. This series is set during the Napoleonic Wars, and they follow pretty much what happens in the Napoleonic Wars, apart from the fact that this is a world where dragons are a thing. Dragons are used in war as an aerial force for bombing, breathing fire, or anything else they can do. Laurence is a British Navy captain who, in book 1, His Majesty's Dragon, he captures a ship, a French ship, on which there is a dragon egg, and when the dragon hatches, the dragon needs a handler, and Laurence becomes that handler and decides to name the dragon Temeraire after the ship depicted in that beautiful painting by J.M.W. Turner. Laurence then has to leave the Navy in order to join the Aerial Corps, so he starts training with Temeraire and becomes the captain of Temeraire, and then they go and fight in the Napoleonic War, and all goes well until the end of book 1, when they discover that Temeraire is actually a Chinese breed of dragon, a very specific Chinese breed called a celestial, and these dragons normally are only fit for emperors and not for warfare. Book 2, Throne of Jade, Laurence and Temeraire have to travel all the way to China in order to sort out this diplomatic incident, because Temeraire was originally destined to go to Napoleon. Only now there's no question of him doing that. In China, Laurence and Temeraire get to see that dragons live in a very different way. They are completely integrated into society, unlike they are in the UK, where people fear them. So Temeraire decides that he, upon returning to the UK, is going to try and install this kind of mentality with the British people and the dragons. However, while they're in China, the Emperor decides to make Laurence his honorary son to make up for the fact he owns a celestial dragon, and this leads to a fight with the Emperor's brother, who was hoping to take over from him, and his dragon, Lien. And the Emperor's brother dies as a consequence of this battle, and his dragon, Lien, becomes furious and blames Temeraire and Laurence for his death, even though his death was a consequence of her actions. In book 3, Black Powder War, Laurence and Temeraire travel all the way across the Middle East in order to get back to England. However, they stop off in Turkey, where they're supposed to pick up some eggs, fire-breathing eggs, because the British don't have fire-breathing dragons, and a bunch of stuff happens. They also meet Lien, who's also making the same journey with a French diplomat. She is going to join Napoleon's army in order to make Temeraire and Laurence's lives a misery. She's angry. In book 4, Empire of Ivory, Laurence and Temeraire finally get back to the UK, only to discover that all the dragons are sick, and the book essentially is about finding the cure for this sickness. They travel to Africa in order to find it and bring it back to the UK, only when they do that, the British military people decide that the best thing to do is to infect the French dragons with this disease, thus possibly infecting the whole mainland, all the dragons, with this disease. Temeraire won't stand for that, so he and Laurence take the cure over to Napoleon and Lien, at which point they become traitors to the crown. And all of that brings us to book 5. At the beginning of this book, Laurence is held captive on a ship, and Temeraire has been sent to mating grounds because with no captain he can no longer serve in the Aerial Corps, and he's not very happy there, let's be honest. He has a peculiar relationship with the other dragons on the mating grounds. They pretty much just eat, sleep and perform their duties. And he starts having a conflict with one of them who wants to pinch his cave. And, you know, he's having a hard time, basically. He's tired. However, he does discover that one of the little dragons is supremely intelligent and very, very good at maths and strategy. And this gives him an idea, because the ship that Laurence is on sinks, and Laurence is believed to be dead. And when this news is brought to Temeraire, he decides that he is going to form his own army, his own dragon army that won't have riders, and go and contribute to the war effort, which he does. He gets all the dragons of the mating grounds together. Some of them are retired dragons that were used in warfare, and his new little friend who's very good at strategies, and they go and become their own military force and join the war effort. But despite their efforts, Napoleon still triumphs in invading Britain. He manages to land his forces in Britain, and the key to his success is Lian's advice in military strategy. She brings all her knowledge of the Chinese dragons, how they're used in warfare, how they use them during battles, and also how they're integrated in society. And Napoleon utilizes this in the best possible way. There's a side to this novel which I love. The alternative history is so well done in this, because I think this was alluded to in book 4, but in book 5 there is a section about how Napoleon is widening the streets of Paris to make room for the dragons, to integrate them in society. And this actually happened. Napoleon did widen the streets of Paris. He did create these big boulevards. It wasn't for dragons. It was to modernize the city. And I love the way that this is, you know, brought into this context. I think it's wonderful. The city was completely remodeled with the help of the architect Haussmann. If you go to Paris, there's the Haussmannian architecture. Well, that's Napoleon and Haussmann were responsible for that. There's a very interesting book by Payanna called Rose. I don't have it because someone lent it to me, but it's about the reconstruction of Paris, how they destroyed all these alleys. So in the book they're using dragons to do it. But in truth, they used cannons. They fired cannons at the buildings to knock them down, and create these big alleyways. And the story Rose takes place in that context. I don't know if it exists in French. I'll look it up. But I thought it was quite an interesting novel. Payanna is worth having a look at. Anyway, getting back to Temeraire. The Temeraire brings forward the idea that dragons need to be treated better in the UK and given status, and like Napoleon's doing in France, and like what is done in China. Because the thing about what Napoleon's doing, it is working really well. It is really motivating these dragons to get out there and fight for him, because now they're not just like, oh yeah, the dragons in the army. They're actually fully part of it. They're given ranks, they're given medals, they're given pavilions to live in. They're not just living in mud fields like the dragons in the UK. Only the British politicians and all the people who contribute to the war effort are very, very reticent to this idea, because, oh, it's how much is it going to cost? And Naomi Novik really captured the essence of British politics in all of this, because that is what it's like. Whenever something is proposed, it's always like, oh yeah, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to modernise anything. And, you know, it all goes horribly wrong. Or when they attempt to do things, they don't think it through. They don't ask anyone who actually knows about anything. And the money gets spent in the wrong areas, and then everything goes wrong. And that is particularly visible with what's going on now. I sound ridiculously British, but I actually live in France, and I've lived in France my whole life. I don't live in Britain for a reason. So well done, Naomi Novik, for really capturing that essence in this book. That was really good. And then we have the dragons joining the war effort. Laurence is actually, he isn't dead. He isn't dead. He is brought back to Temeraire, and there's this beautiful scene of Temeraire thinks he's seeing a ghost. He's looking at him thinking, you're not real, you're dead. It's this quite amusing scene. And they are like, oh, Laurence is reunited with Temeraire, he gets part of his crew back, and they are sent to basically scour the countryside and try and stop French raiding parties, because the French obviously need to feed their armies and feed their dragons on British soil, so they will be pillaging villages and capturing cattle and things like that. And Laurence and Temeraire get the army of dragons together, along with some other captains and military dragons, and try to stop them. And it, once again, like with the ship journey in book 2, which could have been potentially very boring, Naomi Novik really managed to take something that potentially could be boring, because all they're doing is like flying around the countryside trying to find French troops for weeks. But she manages to make it fascinating. I really love this ability Naomi Novik has to just write about anything and make it interesting. She could write about a glass of water and make it fascinating. One of the eggs they collected from Turkey hatched into a fire-breathing dragon called Iskierka, who is this just hyperactive ball of over-enthusiasm. She is brilliant, wonderful character, and in this book she seems to have a thing about Temeraire, because she talks about allowing him to have an egg with her. And he has no interest in this at all. She profoundly annoys him, but we shall see. The other aspect of this that I really appreciated is how important it is to feed the armies and feed the animals, like how much time and energy is going into that. And especially as so much of the book is focused on stopping Napoleon's army from getting those precious resources. Obviously there are the battles that are important parts of war, but there's also the, you know, feeding everyone. You've got hundreds of thousands of people, God knows how many horses, and all the dragons, and they all need to be fed. And this is how they basically wear Napoleon's army out and get him booted out of Britain. He attempts another invasion, which they manage to abort, and then eventually the troops come back. There's a huge battle at the end, and Lien takes part in it. And she is terrifying. She is absolutely terrifying. She is insane. She is intent on getting revenge on Laurence and Temeraire, and utilising Napoleon's forces in every way possible to do that, and her own forces when that fails, which is what she does at the end of this book. So despite Laurence's contribution and Temeraire's contribution to the war effort and getting Napoleon out of Britain, they are still criminals. He is still a traitor. And although he's not going to be sentenced to death, or Temeraire, he is being sent to a penal colony in Australia. And the point of this is to introduce dragons onto the Australian land, because this is the only country in the world which doesn't have dragons. So that's how the book ends. They get on the boat and they're off to Australia with some eggs, and Iskierka also comes to join them, and she's still flapping on about having an egg with Temeraire. I love her. She's so cute, so funny. So, like all the others, I read it all in one go. I couldn't put it down, because, yeah, I haven't yet been disappointed by this series. It's brilliant. It's really, really brilliant. And there are so many aspects of it that are good, and Naomi Novik really did a lot of research to make the battles and just the whole, like, workings of the war and the progression of it believable. And it's so, you know, I'm reading this, I don't have a problem with Napoleon riding a white Chinese dragon. I don't have a problem with that at all, despite the fact that I ate Napoleon and the Napoleonic Wars when I was at school. Obviously, having grown up in France, we got to find out a lot about that, and there are a lot of cultural, like historical cultural aspects woven into this. It's so well done. So really, really, really good series. I haven't been this obsessed with a series since Harry Potter, to be honest. So, or maybe also Lukianenko's Watch series. I was also pretty obsessed with that. So yeah, this is the third series in my whole life I have been this obsessed with, and I still dream about it at night. So that was Victory of Eagles, the 5th book in the Temeraire series. And that is it from me. I'll be back soon with my video on Match, the first in the Match trilogy by Abby. Is it Abby or Ali Condi? I can't remember. Her. That's not going to be my next video. I'll see you then. And don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe. Please support my channel. I really love making these videos. See ya.